I, 26 Seth, always believed that love was built on small, quiet things. The way my husband, Mark, would make me coffee every morning without me having to ask. The way my best friend, Chloe, would remember a silly story from 10 years ago and make me laugh until I cried. Our lives were woven together with these tiny threads of trust and affection. I thought our bond was unbreakable. I was wrong. The breaking point was not a dramatic explosion, but a quiet discovery on a sunny afternoon. It started with a surprise I had planned for Mark. He was supposed to be at the cabin. It was our dream project, a small, rustic place nestled in the woods about an hour from the city. We had poured our savings into it, and Mark, being handy, had taken on the renovations himself to save money. He had been spending weekends and some weeknights there, working hard to get it ready for us to enjoy by the summer. I was proud of him, of US, of the future we were building. That particular day, I got off work early and decided to drive up there. I packed a picnic basket with his favorite sandwiches and a flask of hot soup. I imagined his tired but happy face when he saw me. It was a simple, loving gesture. The drive was pleasant. I listened to music and thought about how lucky I was. I had a loving husband, a best friend who was more like a sister, and a future that felt bright and secure. As I turned onto the long, gravel driveway leading to the cabin, I saw Mark's truck parked near the front porch. A smile touched my lips. He was here. But then my heart stopped. Parked right next to his truck, so close that their doors were almost touching, was another car. A familiar car. It was Chloe's little blue sedan. For a moment, my mind refused to process what I was seeing. There had to be a logical explanation. Maybe her car broke down, and Mark was helping her. Maybe she had decided to surprise him too, bringing him supplies or just keeping him company. Chloe was my best friend. She was Mark's friend too. It was normal for them to be in the same place. But something about the scene felt wrong. The stillness of the woods, the two cars parked so intimately together, the complete absence of any sound of renovation work. There was no hammering, no sawing, just an unnerving silence. I pulled my car over to the side of the driveway, hidden by a thicket of trees. My hands were shaking. The picnic basket on the passenger seat suddenly seemed ridiculous. I turned off the engine and just sat there, my mind racing. Why would Chloe be here? Mark had said he wanted to be alone to focus on the work. He had told me not to come up this weekend because it was a mess of sawdust and wet paint. And Chloe, when I had texted her this morning, had said she was feeling unwell, planning a quiet day at home. They had both lied. A cold dread washed over me. It was a feeling so intense it was almost physical, like a hand squeezing my chest. I thought about all the times Chloe had been the third wheel in our relationship, but in a comfortable, easy way. We were a trio. We went to movies together, had dinners, celebrated holidays. Mark often joked that he had married both of us. I had always laughed. It did not feel like a joke anymore. I thought about the little inside jokes they shared, the way they sometimes seemed to be on the same wavelength, finishing each other's sentences. I had always seen it as a sign of their close friendship, a friendship that existed because of me. Now I saw it in a new, sickening light. I knew I could not confront them. Not yet. I was not ready to face the truth, whatever it was. I needed to think. I needed to be smart. With a trembling hand, I put my car in reverse and slowly, carefully, backed down the driveway until I was back on the main road. I drove away from the cabin, from my husband and my best friend, and my whole world felt like it was tilting on its axis. The drive back to the city was a blur. I do not remember the music I played or the roads I took. All I could see was the image of those two cars, parked side by side in the woods. When I got home to our empty apartment, the silence was deafening. I walked through the rooms we had decorated together, touching the furniture we had picked out, looking at the photos on the walls. There was one of us on our wedding day, Mark, Chloe, and me, all three of us beaming. Chloe was my maid of honor. She had given a speech that made everyone cry, talking about our lifelong friendship and how happy she was that I had found a man who deserved me. Was it all a lie? My mind went into overdrive. I needed proof. A suspicion, no matter how strong, was not enough. I needed something concrete, something undeniable. My first thought was our finances. Mark managed our joint credit card. He was meticulous about it, always paying the bill on time. He said it was easier for him to handle the household expenses that way. I trusted him completely. I rarely even looked at the statements. Now, that trust felt like a weakness they had exploited. I went to his office, my heart pounding in my ears. I sat down at his desk and turned on the computer. I knew his password. It was a combination of my birthday and our anniversary. The irony was not lost on me. I logged into our online banking portal and pulled up the credit card statements for the last few months. At first, everything looked normal. Groceries, gas, utility bills. Then I started looking closer at the dates Mark had supposedly been at the cabin or working late. A charge from a restaurant caught my eye. It was from a fancy Italian place in a town about 30 minutes from the cabin, a place we had never been to together. The charge was for over $200. It was on a Tuesday night when Mark had told me he was pulling an all-nighter at his office to meet a deadline. I scrolled further. Another charge, this time for a boutique hotel in a charming little tourist town a few hours away. It was for a weekend 2 months ago. A weekend Mark had spent at a work conference. A weekend Chloe had told me she was visiting her sick aunt out of state. The pieces were starting to click into place, forming a picture I did not want to see. The worst was yet to come. I found a charge from a high-end lingerie store. It was for an amount that made my stomach churn. I knew for a fact that he had not bought anything like that for me. I felt a wave of nausea. This was not just a suspicion anymore. This was evidence. Cold, hard, digital proof of his betrayal. He was not just cheating on me. He was using our money, the money we were saving for our future, to fund his affair with my best friend. I printed out the statements, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the paper. I sat there on the floor of his office, surrounded by the proof of their lies, and I felt a profound sense of loneliness. The two people I would have turned to for comfort in a moment like this were the very people who had caused my pain. There was no one to call, no one to cry to. I was completely and utterly alone. But then, something shifted. The deep, aching sadness began to curdle into something else. Anger. A cold, clear, clarifying anger. They had not just betrayed me. They had underestimated me. They thought I was naive. They thought I was weak. They thought they could lie to my face, and I would just smile and believe them. They were about to find out how wrong they were. I knew I needed a plan. A messy, emotional confrontation would only give them the chance to gaslight me, to turn the tables and make me seem like the crazy one. I was not going to give them that satisfaction. I was going to be calm. I was going to be strategic. I was going to gather every piece of evidence I could find, and then I was going to dismantle their world just like they had dismantled mine. My first step was to act normal. It was the hardest thing I had ever had to do. When Mark came home that evening, he was all smiles. He kissed me and told me how much he had missed me. He smelled faintly of pine and sawdust, a scent he must have acquired on his drive back from the cabin. It was all part of the performance. "How was your day, honey?" he asked, wrapping his arms around my waist. I forced a smile. It was good. Quiet. I had to fight the urge to recoil from his touch. "And how was the cabin?" I asked, my voice steady. "Did you get a lot done?" He launched into a detailed description of his work. He talked about sanding the floors, applying the first coat of paint to the bedroom walls, and fixing a leaky faucet in the kitchen. He was a good liar. His story was filled with specific, believable details. He looked me right in the eye as he spoke, his expression open and honest. It was chilling. "That sounds like a lot of progress," I said, my voice betraying none of the turmoil inside me. "I am so proud of you." He beamed at me. "We're going to have so many great memories there, Amy." The use of my nickname, the name only he and Chloe used, felt like a twist of the knife. I just nodded, unable to speak. I had to get out of there. I made an excuse about needing to run an errand, and left the apartment. I drove to a nearby park and sat in my car, the printed credit card statements on the seat beside me. I needed to talk to someone. Not just anyone, but someone I could trust implicitly. That list had just gotten terrifyingly short. There was Sarah. We had been friends since college. She was smart, level-headed, and fiercely loyal. She did not know Mark and Chloe very well, which was a good thing. She would be objective. I called her. "Hey, what's up?" she answered, her voice cheerful. "Sarah, can I come over?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. "I need to talk to you about something." The cheerfulness in her voice vanished, replaced by concern. "Of course. Are you okay? You sound upset." "I will be," I said. I need a friend right now. I am on my way to my apartment now. "Meet me there in 20 minutes, she said. When I got to Sarah's place, she took one look at my face and pulled me into a hug. I did not cry. I was past tears. I was in a strange state of numb shock and cold fury. We sat down on her couch, and I laid the credit card statements out on the coffee table. "I think Mark is having an affair," I said, the words feeling foreign in my mouth. Sarah looked at the statements, her brow furrowed. "With who?" I took a deep breath. "With Chloe." Her eyes widened in disbelief. "No. Amy, that is impossible. Chloe is your best friend." "I know," I said quietly. "That's what I thought too." I told her everything. About the surprise visit to the cabin, about seeing Chloe's car, about the lies they both told me. I pointed to the charges on the statements, explaining the significance of each one. The expensive dinner, the boutique hotel, the lingerie. As I spoke, the story became more real, more solid. It was no longer just a terrible suspicion in my head. It was a fact. Sarah listened patiently, her expression growing more and more grim. When I was finished, she was silent for a long time. She picked up one of the statements and studied it. "This is a lot, Amy," she said finally. "But it's all circumstantial. The cars could be a coincidence. The charges, he could have an explanation for them." "What explanation could he possibly have for buying lingerie that I have never seen?" I asked, my voice sharp. I know, she said soothingly. "I am just playing devil's advocate. If you're going to confront him, you need more than this. You need something they cannot deny." She was right. As damning as the statements felt to me, they could probably invent some elaborate lie to explain them away. They were good at lying. I needed something more. I needed irrefutable proof. "What do I do, Sarah?" I asked, feeling a wave of despair. "You keep acting normal," she said, her voice firm. "Do not let them know you suspect anything. You watch them. You listen. You look for more evidence. People who are lying eventually make mistakes. You just have to be there to catch them when they do." Her words gave me a sense of purpose. She was right. This was not the time for emotion. This was the time for strategy. I went home that night with a new resolve. I was no longer a victim. I was a detective, and my own life was the crime scene. The next few days were a masterclass in deception. I played the part of the loving, unsuspecting wife perfectly. I asked Mark about his day. I listened to his stories about work and the cabin. I smiled and kissed him goodnight. Every touch, every word felt like a betrayal of myself, but I knew it was necessary. I was biding my time, waiting for my opportunity. I also kept in close contact with Chloe. I texted her every day, asking how she was feeling, making plans for the future. She replied with her usual warmth and affection, full of heart emojis and exclamation points. She told me she missed me and that we needed to have a girls' night soon. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. Behind their backs, I continued my investigation. I started paying closer attention to our finances. I noticed that Mark was making regular cash withdrawals from our joint account. Small amounts, a few $100s at a time. They were frequent enough to be suspicious, but not large enough to raise any immediate red flags. I started keeping a log of the dates and amounts. I also started looking through his things. It felt like a gross violation of privacy, but I was past caring about that. I went through his computer history, his phone records, his pockets when he was in the shower. I was looking for anything, a receipt, a note, a text message that would confirm what I already knew. But they were careful. There was nothing. It was frustrating. I felt like I was going in circles. The circumstantial evidence was piling up, but I still did not have the smoking gun I needed. I was starting to lose hope. Maybe Sarah was wrong. Maybe they were too smart to get caught. Then one evening, I got the break I was looking for. Mark was working late again. He had called to say he would not be home until after midnight. I was in his office, looking for a document for our taxes, when I noticed something I had not seen before. A new icon on his desktop. It was for a cloud storage service, one I did not know we used. I clicked on it. It asked for a password. I tried the usual one, my birthday, and our anniversary. It did not work. I tried other combinations. His birthday, his mother's birthday, the name of his childhood pet. Nothing. I was about to give up when I had an idea. I typed in Chloe, followed by her birthday. Access granted. My blood ran cold. The fact that he used her name as a password was a confession in itself. I opened the folder. It was filled with documents and photos. Most of it was work-related stuff, boring spreadsheets and presentations. But then I saw a folder labeled Project. I clicked on it. Inside were more folders. One was labeled Cabin Plans. I opened it. It was not floor plans for our small, rustic cabin. It was architectural drawings for a massive, modern house. A house that would cost a fortune to build. There were links to real estate listings for large plots of land, all of them far more expensive than what we could afford. My confusion turned to horror as I opened another folder. This one was labeled Financials. It contained a detailed spreadsheet. On one side, it listed all of our assets. My salary, Mark's salary, our savings, our investments. And then a line item that made my heart stop. Amy's inheritance. My father had passed away 2 years ago and left me a significant amount of money. I had kept it in a separate account, untouched. It was my safety net, my connection to him. I had told Mark that I was not ready to decide what to do with it yet. But here it was on their spreadsheet, listed as a source of funding for their dream house. The final folder was labeled Correspondence. I clicked on it with a sense of dread. It contained saved emails. Emails between Mark and Chloe. I started reading. The emails were not love letters. They were business plans. They detailed their entire scheme. They were not just having an affair. They were planning a future together, a future built on my money. They wrote about how they were going to convince me to invest my inheritance in the cabin renovation. They had drafted legal documents to put the new property solely in their names. They discussed how they would eventually break the news to me after the money was spent, and there was nothing I could do about it. But the worst part was the way they talked about me. They called me sweet, but naive, gullible, too trusting. They mocked my love for Mark, my friendship with Chloe. They saw me as an obstacle, a means to an end. Chloe wrote in one email, "She'll be sad for a while, but she'll get over it. She's strong. And we deserve to be happy." I felt like I could not breathe. The cruelty, the sheer, calculated coldness of it all was staggering. This was not a simple betrayal. This was a conspiracy. They had been planning this for months, maybe even years. My entire marriage, my closest friendship, it was all a lie. I saved copies of everything. The emails, the financial plans, the architectural drawings. I downloaded them onto a flash drive and then deleted the history from Mark's computer. I sat there in the dark, the glow of the monitor illuminating the tears streaming down my face. But these were not tears of sadness. They were tears of rage. They had made a terrible mistake. They thought I was a pawn in their game. They were about to find out that I was the one who was going to checkmate them. The game was on. My first call the next morning was to a lawyer. I found a highly recommended divorce attorney who specialized in cases involving financial fraud. I made an appointment for the following day. I told my boss I had a family emergency and took the day off. I did not want Mark to know where I was going. The lawyer's office was in a tall, glass building downtown. It felt cold and impersonal, which was exactly what I needed. I did not want sympathy. I wanted justice. I sat across from a woman named Ms. Davis. She was sharp, professional, and had an air of no-nonsense competence that I found reassuring. I told her my story from the beginning. I did not cry. I laid out the facts calmly and methodically. I showed her the credit card statements. I gave her the flash drive with the emails and financial plans. She listened intently, her expression unreadable. When I was finished, she looked at me for a long moment. "This is quite a situation, Mrs. Thompson," she said, her voice even. "Your husband and his associate have been very foolish. What can I do?" I asked. "Legally, you are in a very strong position," she explained. "The emails are clear evidence of a conspiracy to commit fraud. We can use this to ensure that your inheritance is protected and that you receive a favorable settlement in the divorce." She outlined the steps we would need to take: filing for divorce, putting a freeze on our joint assets, and initiating legal action against both Mark and Chloe for the attempted fraud. It was a clear, logical path forward. It was exactly what I needed to hear. "But there's something else," I said, leaning forward. "It's not just about the money. I want them to face consequences for what they did. I want them to lose everything, just like they were planning for me to." Ms. Davis raised an eyebrow. "What do you have in mind?" "Mark is up for a big promotion at work," I explained. "His career is everything to him. He's been working on a deal with a very important client, a man named Mr. Henderson. I did some research on him. He's very old-fashioned, a big proponent of family values. Mark has been selling him this image of himself as a devoted husband and family man." I told her about the company's strict morality clause for its partners, something Mark had complained about but ultimately used to his advantage in crafting his persona for Mr. Henderson. A slow smile spread across Ms. Davis's face. "I see. A public relations disaster on top of a legal 1-inch. "Exactly," I said. "And Chloe, she has built her entire social life around our group of friends. She's the popular one, the one everyone loves. I want people to see her for who she really is." "A multi-pronged approach," Ms. Davis said, nodding in approval. "I like it. It's clean, it's effective, and it's entirely legal. We will handle the divorce and the fraud case. The rest, that will be up to you. But I can advise you on how to proceed without jeopardizing your legal standing." I left her office feeling empowered. For the first time since I saw those 2 cars at the cabin, I felt like I was in control. I had a plan. I had a powerful ally. And I had the truth on my side. The next phase of my plan required careful timing. I needed to choose the perfect moment to detonate the bomb I was building. An opportunity presented itself a few days later. Mark's mother, Carol, called to invite us to a family dinner. She was throwing a party to celebrate Mark's upcoming promotion. She said he had told her the deal with Mr. Henderson was almost finalized. Of course, Chloe was invited too. She was always invited to family events. Carol adored her, often telling me that Chloe was the daughter she never had. The irony was sickening. This was it. The perfect stage. A gathering of family and friends, all there to celebrate Mark's success. It was the ideal setting to expose him and Chloe for the frauds they were. In the days leading up to the dinner, I continued my performance as the dutiful wife. I helped Mark pick out a new suit for the party. I listened to him practice the speech he was planning to give. He was so confident, so sure of himself. He had no idea he was walking into an ambush. I also made a few strategic moves of my own. I contacted Mr. Henderson's company. I did not speak to him directly. I spoke to his executive assistant. I introduced myself as Amelia Thompson, Mark's wife. I said I had some documents that I believed were relevant to Mr. Henderson's business dealings with my husband, and that I thought he should see them before any contracts were signed. I said they pertained to a matter of personal and professional integrity. The assistant was intrigued. I emailed her a password-protected file containing a curated selection of the emails between Mark and Chloe, the ones that most clearly illustrated their deceitful nature and their contemptuous attitude towards me. I told her the password would be provided at a later time. I also reached out to our mutual friends. I did not tell them the whole story. I just planted small seeds of doubt. I mentioned to one friend that Mark had been spending a lot of money lately, and I was worried. I told another that Chloe had been distant and secretive. I was laying the groundwork, preparing them for the shock that was to come. The night of the dinner party arrived. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the simple black dress I had chosen. I looked calm on the outside, but inside, my heart was a jackhammer. This was it. There was no turning back. Mark came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. He rested his chin on my shoulder, looking at our reflection in the mirror. "You look beautiful, Amy," he said, smiling. "Tonight is going to be a great night. The start of our new life." "Yes," I said, meeting his eyes in the reflection. "It certainly is." We drove to his mother's house. Chloe was already there, chatting and laughing with Carol in the kitchen. She was wearing a bright red dress that stood out in the crowded room. She looked vibrant and happy. When she saw me, she rushed over and gave me a tight hug. "Amy, you made it," she exclaimed. "I was just telling Carol how we need to plan a spa day, just the two of us." "That sounds lovely," I said, my voice sweet as poison. The house was filled with Mark's relatives. Aunts, uncles, cousins. They all greeted me warmly, congratulating Mark on his promotion. I smiled and nodded, playing my part. I mingled, I made small talk, I accepted a glass of wine I had no intention of drinking. I was a coiled spring, waiting for the right moment to strike. Dinner was a loud, boisterous affair. Everyone was in high spirits. Carol had made Mark's favorite roast, and the table was laden with food. Mark sat at the head of the table, beaming like a king holding court. Chloe sat to his right, me to his left. Throughout the meal, I watched them. The small, secret smiles they exchanged. The way their knees would occasionally brush under the table. They were so blatant, so arrogant in their deception. They thought they were invisible. After dessert, Carol stood up and clinked her glass with a spoon. The room fell silent. "I would like to propose a toast," she said, her voice thick with pride. "To my wonderful son, Mark. He has worked so hard to get where he is today, and we are all so proud of him. To Mark and to his bright future." Everyone raised their glasses. To Mark, they cheered. Mark stood up, a smug smile on his face. "Thank you, Mom. Thank you, everyone. I couldn't have done it without the support of my amazing family and, of course, my beautiful wife, Amelia." He turned to me and smiled. "And I also want to thank Chloe, who has been such a great friend to both of us." He was about to sit down when I spoke, my voice cutting through the applause. "I have a question, Mark," I said. The room went quiet again. Everyone turned to look at me. Mark looked surprised. "Of course, honey. What is it?" I kept my voice light, conversational. "I was just thinking about the cabin. I am so excited for it to be finished. How is the work coming along? I was thinking of driving up this weekend to see it." I saw a flicker of panic in his eyes. He exchanged a quick, nervous glance with Chloe. "Oh, honey, you don't want to do that," he said, forcing a laugh. "It's a complete mess right now.
Dust everywhere, wet paint.
It's not safe. You should wait a few more weeks." "Yes, Amy, let him work," Chloe chimed in, her voice a little too bright. "You know how he gets when he's in the zone. You don't want to distract him." Carol nodded in agreement. "She's right, dear. Let the man do his job. You can see it when it's finished." I let the silence hang in the air for a moment. Then I smiled. It was a cold, sharp smile. "That's funny," I said, my voice dropping to a lower, more serious tone. "Because I was there last week." The color drained from Mark's face. Chloe froze, her wine glass halfway to her lips. "I went to surprise you, Mark," I continued, my eyes locked on his. "And I was the one who was surprised. Chloe, you must know how it looks. Your car was parked right next to his." A collective gasp went through the room. Carol's face contorted in disbelief. "Amelia, what on earth are you talking about?" she demanded. "That's a ridiculous accusation." Mark found his voice. "She's right, Mom. Amy, you must be mistaken. Chloe wasn't there. I was alone all day. My car's in the shop all last week," Chloe added, her voice high and shrill. "I have the receipts to prove it. Amy, Why are you making things up? They were trying to gaslight me, to make me look hysterical in front of everyone. It was exactly what I had expected. I am not mistaken. I am here, in this moment, and I feel a strange calm settle over me. The lies are so loud in the quiet room. So, you are both calling me a liar? I ask, my voice steady. It is not a question. It is a challenge. Honey, you have been under a lot of stress lately, Mark says, his tone shifting to one of condescending concern. Maybe you just imagined it. We can talk about this at home. He is trying to control the narrative, to shut this down before it goes any further. I am not stressed, Mark, I say, my voice like ice. I am angry, and I am done talking about this at home. We're going to talk about it right here, right now. I pull out my phone. I can feel every eye in the room on me. I open the file where I save the emails. Since you both seem to have memory problems, maybe this will help refresh your recollection, I say. I start to read. I read the email where Chloe talks about how they deserve to be happy and how I will just get over it. I read the part where Mark calls me naive and too trusting. I read their detailed plans to convince me to invest my inheritance into their dream house. With every word, the atmosphere in the room grows more toxic. Mark's relatives are staring at him and Chloe with expressions of shock and disgust. Carol looks like she is about to faint. This is from an email you sent on March 15th, Chloe, I say, looking directly at her. You wrote, we just have to be patient. Once the money is transferred, we can put the property in our names. She'll never even know until it's too late. Chloe starts to sob, her face buried in her hands. She does not deny it. She cannot. Mark stands up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. His face is pale, his eyes wild. That's enough, Amy, he shouts. You are taking things out of context. Those are private conversations. Are they? I ask, because it sounds like a plan to commit fraud to me. And I am pretty sure my lawyer will agree. The word lawyer hangs in the air like a death sentence. I then turn my attention to his mother. I hope you are proud of the man you raised, Carol, I say, my voice dripping with contempt. The man who is planning to steal from his wife to build a life with her best friend. The daughter you never had. Carol just stares at me, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. Finally, I turn back to Mark. He is standing there, defeated, his whole world crumbling around him. By the way, I say, my voice a cold whisper. I had a lovely chat with Mr. Henderson's assistant this morning. I just wanted to make sure he knew what kind of family man he was going into business with. I sent over some documents for his review. I gave her the password about an hour ago. I imagine he has read them by now. The last bit of color drains from his face. His promotion. His career. His entire identity. It is all gone. In that moment, he looks smaller than I have ever seen him. I place my napkin on the table and stand up. Thank you for dinner, Carol, I say to the stunned room. I think I have lost my appetite. And with that, I turn and walk out of the house. I do not look back. I do not need to. I can feel the wreckage I have left behind me. The silence in the car on the way to Sarah's apartment is a welcome relief. I did it. I exposed them. The sense of release is overwhelming. I stay with Sarah for the next few days. My phone buzzes constantly with calls and texts from Mark, Chloe, and Carol. I ignore them all. I let them go to voicemail. I listen to a few of them out of a morbid curiosity. Mark's messages are a mix of desperate apologies and angry accusations. Chloe's are just hysterical sobs. Carol's are full of venom, blaming me for ruining her son's life and airing our dirty laundry in public. I delete them all without a second thought. They are just noise. The fallout is swift and brutal, just as I had planned. A few days after the dinner party, I receive a formal email from Mark's company. It is a notification that his employment has been terminated, effective immediately. The email mentions a violation of the company's code of conduct and the loss of a key client account. Mr. Henderson did not appreciate being lied to. Mark's career, the thing he valued more than anything, is in ruins. The social consequences for Chloe are just as severe. Our mutual friends, the ones I had planted seeds of doubt with, start calling me. One by one, I tell them the whole story, backing it up with the emails and credit card statements. They are horrified. Chloe is quickly ostracized from the group. She loses her social standing, her support system, her entire identity as the beloved center of our circle. I see on social media that people are unfriending her, blocking her. She has become a pariah. My lawyer, Ms. Davis, is thrilled with the outcome. The evidence of fraud is so overwhelming that Mark's legal team has no choice but to cooperate. The divorce proceedings are quick and uncontested. I get everything I want. My inheritance is fully protected. I receive a majority of our shared assets, including the full value of the cabin property, which is sold immediately. The court-ordered settlement leaves Mark with very little. He has no job, no savings, and a mountain of legal bills. A few weeks later, I am sitting with Sarah in a coffee shop, sipping a latte. I feel lighter than I have in years. "So, what's next for you?" she asks, smiling at me. "I am not sure," I admit. "A new apartment for sure. Maybe a trip somewhere. A fresh start." "You deserve it," she says, reaching across the table and squeezing my hand. "You are the strongest person I know." I smile. I did not know I was, until I had to be. The legal process finalizes a month later. The final decree arrives in the mail. It is just a piece of paper, but it represents the end of a chapter of my life. A painful, ugly chapter. But also, a chapter of transformation. I move into a new apartment in a different part of the city. It is smaller than the one I shared with Mark, but it is all mine. I fill it with new furniture, new art, new memories. I start to rebuild my life, piece by piece. I reconnect with old friends. I focus on my work. I start to heal. One day, about 6 months after the divorce, I run into one of Mark's cousins at the grocery store. She looks at me with a mixture of pity and awe. "I heard about what happened," she says, her voice low. "I just wanted to say, I am sorry for how he treated you. No one deserves that."
But wow.
You really handled it." I just nod. There is nothing else to say. I never see Mark or Chloe again. I hear through the grapevine that they are still together, living in a small, rented apartment in a rundown part of town. Mark is working a low-paying retail job, trying to rebuild his career from scratch. Chloe is working as a waitress. They have lost everything. Their money, their friends, their reputations. All they have left is each other. I wonder, sometimes, if that is a comfort or a punishment. I do not feel hatred for them anymore. I do not feel anything for them at all. They are just ghosts from a past life. They took my trust and my love and tried to turn it into a weapon against me. They underestimated my strength, my intelligence, my will to fight for myself. They thought I was a quiet place to rest, a soft landing for their selfish ambitions. They learned I was the storm, and after the storm, there is always peace. I found mine. I hope they are still searching for theirs, lost in the wreckage they created. My new life began to take shape. The first few months were about logistics. Finding the apartment, buying furniture, changing all my legal documents. Each task was a small step away from the person I used to be. The woman who trusted too easily, who believed in fairy tales. That woman was gone. In her place was someone more cautious, more deliberate. Someone who understood that the only person you can truly rely on is yourself. Sarah remained my anchor. We spent a lot of time together, not talking about the past, but planning the future. We took a cooking class. We went hiking on the weekends. We planned a trip to Italy, something I had always wanted to do, but Mark had always put off. He had said we needed to save for the cabin. Now I knew what he was really saving for. One evening, we were sitting on my new balcony, looking out at the city lights. "Do you ever think about them?" Sarah asked gently. I knew who she meant. Sometimes, I admitted. Not in a sad way. More like a case study, a lesson in human nature. "You are so clinical about it," she said, shaking her head in admiration. "I have to be," I said. "If I let myself feel the full weight of the betrayal, it would crush me. So, I choose to see it as a learning experience. A very expensive, very painful learning experience. We were quiet for a while. Then I said, the thing that still gets me is the planning. The sheer audacity of it. The spreadsheets, the emails. They were so methodical. It wasn't a crime of passion. It was a cold, calculated business transaction. And I was the asset they were trying to liquidate. They're sociopaths, Sarah said flatly. Both of them. Maybe, I said. Or maybe they're just ordinary people who let their greed and selfishness consume them. I think that is almost scarier. The trip to Italy was a revelation. I walked through ancient ruins, ate incredible food, and drank wine under the Tuscan sun. I was completely on my own for the first time in my adult life, and it was exhilarating. I did not feel lonely. I felt free. One day, I was sitting in a piazza in Florence, sketching in a notebook, when an older woman sitting next to me struck up a conversation. She was an artist from Australia. We talked for hours about art, travel, and life. She told me about her own painful divorce many years ago. It feels like the end of the world at the time, doesn't it? She said, her eyes twinkling. But it's not. It's the beginning of a new one. You just have to be brave enough to build it. Her words stayed with me. I was building a new world. A world on my own terms. A world where I was the architect, not just a resident. When I got back from my trip, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I threw myself into my work. My boss, who knew a sanitized version of what had happened, was incredibly supportive. He gave me more responsibility, more challenging projects.
I thrived.
I discovered a confidence and a competence I never knew I had. About a year after the divorce, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Carol. I almost threw it away without opening it. But my curiosity got the better of me. I sat down with a cup of tea and read it. It was not the angry, accusatory letter I had expected. It was a letter of apology. She wrote about how she had been blinded by her love for her son, how she had always seen what she wanted to see. She said that in the months since the incident, as she called it, she had seen a side of Mark she never knew existed. He was bitter, resentful, and cruel. He blamed everyone but himself for his downfall. He and Chloe fought constantly, their relationship poisoned by their shared failure. She wrote that she was ashamed of how she had treated me, of how she had always favored Chloe. She asked for my forgiveness, but said she did not expect it. She just wanted me to know that she finally saw the truth. I folded the letter and put it away. I did not know how to feel. I did not feel anger. I did not feel pity. I just felt a quiet sense of closure. Her validation was not something I needed, but it was a loose end I was glad to have tied up. I never wrote back. There was nothing left to say. Life moved on. The sharp edges of the pain began to soften. The memories of Mark and Chloe became less vivid, like an old photograph fading in the sun. They were a part of my story, but they were no longer the whole story. I started dating again, cautiously at first. I was not looking for a new husband. I was just looking for companionship, for someone to share a meal with, to go to a movie with. I met a man named David. He was kind, funny, and intelligent. He was a history teacher, and he had a passion for learning that I found incredibly attractive. I was honest with him from the beginning. I told him I had been through a difficult divorce. I did not go into all the sordid details, but I told him enough so that he understood I was carrying some baggage. He was not scared off. He was patient. He was understanding. He let me set the pace. With David, I discovered a different kind of love. A quieter, more mature love. It was not the whirlwind romance I had with Mark. It was a slow burn, built on a foundation of mutual respect and genuine affection. He did not try to complete me. He just celebrated me for who I was. One evening, we were cooking dinner together in my apartment. He was telling me a story about one of his students, and I was laughing so hard I had to sit down. In that moment, surrounded by the warm smells of garlic and basil, I felt a profound sense of happiness. A happiness that was deep and real and entirely my own. I realized then that Mark and Chloe had not broken me. They had, in a strange and twisted way, liberated me. They had forced me to confront my own weaknesses, to discover my own strength. They had shown me the worst of human nature, and in doing so, they had allowed me to find the best in myself. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place a few months later. I received a check in the mail from my lawyer. It was the final settlement from the sale of a small investment property Mark and I had owned. It was more money than I had expected. I sat there, looking at the check, and I knew exactly what I was going to do with it. The next weekend, I drove out of the city. I drove for an hour, until the buildings gave way to trees. I turned onto a familiar gravel road. I drove up to the cabin. It was still there, of course, unfinished. The paint was peeling. The windows were boarded up. It was a sad, neglected place, a monument to a broken dream. I got out of the car and walked around the property. I remembered the excitement I had felt when we first bought it, the plans we had made. It all felt like a lifetime ago. I did not feel sad. I felt a sense of peace. This place was not a symbol of what I had lost. It was a symbol of what I had survived. I had come to a decision. I was going to buy the other half of the property from the bank with the settlement money. I was going to finish the cabin. Not for Mark. Not for the future we were supposed to have. But for me. It would be my own private sanctuary. A place where I could go to be quiet, to be creative, to be alone. A place to remind myself that it is possible to build something beautiful out of the ruins of the past. As I stood there, looking at the broken-down cabin, I did not see a mess. I saw potential. I saw a project. I saw a future. And for the first time in a long time, I was excited to see what it would hold. The process of renovating the cabin became my therapy. I hired a small local crew of builders, but I was there every weekend, working alongside them. I learned how to sand floors, how to hang drywall, how to tile a bathroom. My hands were calloused, my muscles were sore, but my spirit felt lighter than it had in years. I made changes to the original plans. I got rid of the large, open-concept living space Mark had designed. It felt too impersonal, too much like a stage for entertaining. Instead, I created smaller, cozier rooms. A reading nook with a built-in bookshelf. A small studio where I could paint. A kitchen designed for one person to cook in comfortably. I was building a space for myself, a reflection of my own needs and desires. Sarah came up to visit one weekend. She looked around at the half-finished rooms, a wide smile on her face. "Wow, Amy," she said. "You are really doing this." "I am," I said, a smear of paint on my cheek. "It feels good to be building something instead of tearing something down." "It's going to be beautiful," she said, looking out the large picture window I had installed, which framed a stunning view of the lake. "I know," I said. And I did. As the cabin neared completion, I started thinking about what I would do with it. At first, I had thought of it as a private retreat. But the more time I spent there, the more I realized I did not want to keep it all to myself. It felt too special, too healing, to be hidden away. I had an idea. I started researching retreats for women. Workshops for artists, writers, and anyone who just needed a quiet space to reconnect with themselves. The idea grew and took shape. I could host small groups, lead workshops, create a community of women who were also in the process of building their own new worlds. The thought excited me more than anything had in a long time. It felt like the perfect way to turn my painful past into a positive future. To use my own story of healing to help others heal as well. I named it the Phoenix Retreat, a place to rise from the ashes. It felt a little dramatic, but it was also true. The first retreat I hosted was a small group of 6 women. They were all at different crossroads in their lives. A recent divorcee, a woman who had just lost her job, a new mother struggling with her identity. We spent the weekend doing yoga, hiking in the woods, cooking together, and talking. We shared our stories, our fears, our hopes. On the last day, we sat around a bonfire, watching the stars come out. One of the women, a quiet woman named Maria, turned to me. "Thank you, Amelia," she said, her voice soft. This weekend, it changed something for me. You have created something truly special here. I felt a lump form in my throat. This was it. This was what I was meant to do. This was the purpose that had emerged from my pain. The Phoenix retreat became a success. Word spread, and soon I was booked months in advance. I ran the business myself, with help from Sarah on the weekends. It was hard work, but it was the most fulfilling work I had ever done. I still saw David. Our relationship continued to grow, slowly and steadily. He was my biggest supporter, my greatest cheerleader. He loved the cabin, and he loved what I had created there. He never pushed for more than I was ready to give. He just loved me for who I was right now, in this moment. One day, he came up to the cabin to help me with some gardening. We were planting a new flower bed near the front porch. The sun was warm on our backs, and the air was filled with the scent of pine and damp earth. "You know," he said, wiping a bead of sweat from his forehead, "I have never seen you happier than when you are here." I smiled. "I know. It is my happy place." He took my hand, his fingers intertwining with mine. "I love you, Amy." It was the first time he had said it. My heart did a little flip. "I love you too, David," I said. And I meant it. My life was not perfect. I still had moments of sadness, moments of anger when I thought about the past. But they were just moments. They no longer defined me. My life was full and rich and beautiful. It was a life I had built with my own two hands. I sometimes wondered what Mark and Chloe would think if they could see me now. If they knew about the cabin, about the retreat, about the new life I had created. I imagined they would be filled with bitterness and regret. They had tried to take everything from me, and in the end, they had only succeeded in giving me the motivation to build something better. Their story, from what I heard through the grapevine, did not have a happy ending. Their relationship, born of deceit and greed, could not withstand the pressure of their failure. They broke up acrimoniously, blaming each other for their downfall. Mark was still struggling to find a decent job, his reputation in his industry completely destroyed. Chloe had moved to a different city, trying to escape her past. They were both adrift, their lives a testament to the destructive power of their own choices. I did not take any pleasure in their misery. I simply saw it as the natural consequence of their actions. They had sown seeds of betrayal, and they had reaped a harvest of loneliness and despair. As for me, I had planted a different kind of garden, a garden of healing, of community, of self-love. And it was flourishing. I looked at David, his kind face smiling at me, and I felt a wave of gratitude so intense it almost brought me to tears. I had survived the storm, and I had emerged on the other side, stronger, wiser, and more whole than I had ever been before. The future was an open road, and I was ready to see where it would take me. The past was a closed book, and I was finally ready to leave it on the shelf.